Good evening. I'm Nicole Morrissey O'Donnell, Sheriff of Multnomah County. For more than a decade, the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office has had the privilege of serving the City of Troutdale as your contracted law enforcement agency. Our partnership has resulted in a professional, responsive, and highly capable public safety model that the residents here have come to expect and deserve. The purpose of my testimony tonight is to share the operational realities of moving from a current contracted policing model with the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office to fully standing up a City of Troutdale Police Department. Throughout these discussions, the safety of our Troutdale community is my highest priority. Our current partnership offers Troutdale residents, business owners, and visitors comprehensive 24/7 law enforcement services. That includes patrol, major crimes detectives, canine units, tactical response teams, and access to a broad range of specialized resources that are critical for modern-day policing. Assigned to this building alone, there are 60 uniformed deputy sheriffs, which includes a stable supervisory structure of sergeants, lieutenants, captains, and a chief deputy who oversees all of law enforcement operations, as well as a full complement of records and evidence staff. There have been discussions about Troutdale's ability to simply contract out for these specialized teams, and specifically mutual aid through intergovernmental agreements, while not maintaining the current contract for policing services through the Sheriff's Office. As Sheriff, I do expect our deputies to support every neighboring jurisdiction in a crisis, and we do that proudly for the safety of all of Multnomah County and to support our public safety partners. That said, mutual aid agreements are a vital safety net for extraordinary crises and other high-risk public safety events. They are not a substitute for dedicated staffing, investigative capacity, supervisory oversight, or daily patrol operations. Currently, MCSO deploys 2 patrol cars on 3 shifts in the City of Troutdale. There may be a perception that in the absence of the police contract, that these 2 patrol cars will be absorbed into broader MCSO operations, essentially patrolling elsewhere, but available for additional response into the city. That's not the case. In the absence of this contract, those patrol assets for the city will be eliminated. They won't be in our budget. We will maintain responsibility for all of unincorporated Multnomah County and our other contract cities, potentially putting us miles away from the City of Troutdale. Day-to-day patrols would fall entirely on the city's new police department. If a major incident overwhelmed Troutdale's operational capacity, we would respond to help stabilize an incident, but our response would depend on operational demands and calls for service in other areas of the county, as well as our location at the time of the call is dispatched. Every law enforcement agency must also account for employee leave, such as vacation, sick time, family leave, paid leave Oregon, and other unexpected absences. Under the proposed model that we have been made aware of, when a Troutdale officer is on any type of leave, something that we all should expect on a more routine basis than expected, it may be nearly impossible to backfill that shift. As a result, service reductions, staffing shortages, or gaps in coverage will become more frequent. One of the greatest strengths of our model, as you know, is our ability to scale and surge our resources. Our size allows us to absorb unexpected demands and calls for service while still being able to run city-specific proactive missions to address community concerns, including traffic safety missions and other public safety priorities. That is without ever pulling a deputy sheriff from these 2 districts and their regular patrols. Take, for example, the recent shooting of a 13-year-old girl. Because of our ability to immediately deploy additional resources to the scene, it did not require us relying on our neighboring agencies to conduct life-saving aid to the victim while simultaneously setting up a crime scene and conducting an active search. That call alone drew nearly 24 deputy sheriffs and supervisors. This type of incident, while rare, it's extremely resource intensive. It requires dedicated investigative personnel and would be highly difficult for a small law enforcement agency to absorb, particularly with the staffing model that has no investigative resource allocated. To clarify further, terminating the current public safety contract will eliminate the 2 dedicated detective positions currently assigned to Troutdale. The remaining Sheriff's Office investigative resources will be deployed exclusively to other areas of Multnomah County, leaving Troutdale responsible for establishing its own criminal investigations infrastructure. Lastly, establishing and operating a standalone police department extends far beyond the officers assigned to patrol. which means that Troutdale must independently fund its own infrastructure to include, but not limited to, evidence management, record systems, professional standards and internal affairs, officer training programs, policy development and accreditation efforts, and being fully covered for risk management and liability. These operational realities are just important considerations to share as the city evaluates the long-term sustainability, service levels, and the public safety impacts. I continue to view our relationship with Troutdale as a long-term investment in the community's safety and stability. I care about this city. I feel a great deal of responsibility for the safety of our Troutdale residents. By continuing to partner with the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, the city of Troutdale can maintain a level of public safety that this community expects and deserves. Any other comments?
I'm a 40-year Troutdale resident. I spoke at another meeting. I have 30 years of law enforcement experience in this city. I understand the finances of a very expensive contract that you're looking at. I also understand the reality of a part-time police department in a city this size. Changing Troutdale, remember, the most important things to me in Troutdale are my water and my sewer. My water coming in and my sewer going out. And then when our city expanded, the population grew, we needed a new sewage treatment plant. It was really expensive. The city found a way to do that. That's really important to me. You begin to be inside, well, you can use your water and power except from midnight to 6 in the morning. Frustrated. That's what it looks like when you're talking about fire, also, but police. Not having that response. It sparks a lot of personal feelings in me. It reminds me of 2020 and a lot of bad stuff. COVID. That place burning really close to here. But the public cry justifiably about anger with the police and defunding the police. I heard that, not just here, but in a lot of communities. That little experiment didn't go well. The places that tried that scaled back their police. Huge increase in crime. It was terrible for a lot of cities. Portland was one of them. We were lucky here. That didn't happen here. It didn't happen here. I don't want that to happen here. I hate to use those words, but that's what it sounds like. It sounds like you're partially defunding the police. But I think that's real dangerous. As a community member, it terrifies me. Just urge you to look at some other options. I know there's not a lot. I know we have limited resources here. I understand that. That's it. Thank you for your time.
Is there anybody else? All right. Number 3 is update on law enforcement.
Chair Allen, give me just 1 sec as I break open my agenda real quick. In your packet, you'll see a number of financial equations and projections. What I've done is I took our fire contract that we have with the city of Gresham and extrapolated that out over the span of that contract. The full purpose for this is to put all the contracts side by side on what we get and what we lose, cost-wise, personnel-wise, and all parts considering. After we go through the financial projections, you'll see the Troutdale proposal, which has our 12 officers with the 13th for code compliance, and then records clerk on there, as well as our budget for what we were projecting on that. Some questions were, what about insurance? What about overtime? What about other? They're all listed in the budget projections for the limited proposal, the Troutdale PD proposal. I also included what our status quo contract, there's really just the exhibit that goes along with our agreement with the Sheriff's Office. There's the status quo contract, that was the 5.7 million for this fiscal year, and then the following page is the revised contract that was proposed by the Sheriff's Office at the 4.7 with the 6% escalator. And I added some notes on there because the sheriff had said that there would be a community liaison included with that contract as well. Even though we'd be losing the community resource officer, you'd still have that liaison component. So I just wanted to lay them all out there so the council could consider what those numbers are. Essentially it goes from, I can dive in there, I think it goes from 18 to essentially 14, let me just get I want to make sure I get the numbers right here. So it goes from 18 currently, that's the current contract, to 14 with the revised, and then the Troutdale option is the 13. So there's one FTE difference between those. And it's a different structure. I think the Troutdale structure has more of the hierarchy built in for long-term sustainability and growth within the police force. Those are things that the Sheriff's Office already has embedded, and so they don't really need to account for those in their contract. That's why you see the two sergeants and then the deputies to coincide with the proposal over there, because they already have the built-in admin features within their agency. Cost-wise, and now I'll just go through the projections just so we get a good idea of what we're comparing here. Like I said at our last meeting, I felt that the sheriff came back with a very competitive and reasonable proposal, and is worth due consideration by this body and the city council. In comparison to what the Troutdale proposal is that we were considering, it really boils down to about a $3 million savings over this 5-year span. Part of that is the first year overlap with the current contract with Multnomah County. That's why when you look at year one running the current Multnomah County contract plus ours, you get a much higher number. It's in that almost $10 million figure for year one for fire and police services. So you see a little bit of a loss in year one, and then you start seeing the savings come into play as staff come on. Again, I will say once again that it's a very competitive proposal by the Sheriff's Office, and in fact they're right with us for the first 3 years, I would say, before you start seeing a differential there, and that's with their escalator being at the 6%. That's the page one where you see the projections on there. That breaks down the costs. The first 3 lines, the first line is the fire contract. The next is the current contract that we have with Multnomah County, which is the status quo at the 5.7. The next line is the revised proposal from Multnomah County, that's the 4.7. And then the final line is the Troutdale proposal. And as you see, our first year fully running is estimated about 4.1, 4.2 million. Whereas the sheriff's deputies, or the sheriff's proposal is 4.7 and a half, 4.8. As we go down this, you're gonna see the combination of those costs below. The status quo with all 3, currently, you're looking at about $10 million, and it escalates up to $13 million and change by the end of 2030, which is a total 5-year total of about $55 million. The revised MCO proposal with the fire reduces that number and creates a savings of about $8 million over 5 years. So that's a great decrease over what we were at. So the total for that was $47 million. That's an $8 million savings. The Troutdale PD, which was being proposed, comes in at a 5-year total of $43 million. So that's a total savings over the status quo of $11 million and $3 million savings over what the sheriff's proposal came in at. As we go to the next, this is just the breakdown. The next page is where it says cost for police services. There you can see what the escalation rates are. Current contract has a pretty high rate of increase. The proposal has a better rate of increase at only 6%. And the Troutdale, we were optimistically saying 3%. Maybe that's not fair. But if it goes up more than that, that'd be a rate unsustainable to what we have in the budget. So one of the things that was enticing about creating our own police force is that we would have increased control in that sense. So we could stay under those budget parameters if necessary. The next page, I just wanted to go over what the fee estimates might look like. Right now, we apply a public safety fee of $25 starting in July to every equivalent residential unit in the city of Troutdale. So there are roughly 7,357 equivalent residential units in the city of Troutdale. So the math here calculates the fee times that figure times 12 months. And that will give you your your sum that you see at the bottom where it says estimated annual fee revenue. And those coincide with what the fee would be. And so I broke this up into two different models. One is we take all of our general fund revenue from property taxes and dump it into public safety at 100%, or we take the recommended 70% of all property tax and dump it into public safety. And then you get the fee estimate based on whatever model the council elects to apply. Right now, we're kind of using the 100% version. We're at about a $25 rate instead of the $32 that was recommended. Does that all make sense for you? Any questions on that one? The next page, I kind of dive into what a 5-year levy would look like. During the budget committee, we had discussions of getting an operation levy in place in lieu of the public safety fee. So instead of charging a $25 public safety fee on every water meter in the city, we would essentially go to operating levy instead. And so what you see here is the levy calculations based on the total delta at both 100% and the 70% deltas. And the recommended is what we're recommending to move forward. Not recommended is dumping all of our property tax revenue into law enforcement and providing no additional property taxes for any other department or government service. So those are the numbers right there. What you see is a recommendation of $1.40 per thousand if you use the Troutdale option, $1.60 per thousand if we use the revised Multnomah County Sheriff's Office proposal, and $2.20 per thousand if we stick with the status quo. Questions on that page there?
Just for clarification, it might be nice if we add this to this chart. The fee estimates, that's public utility fee and levies or property tax.
Say that again.
The first one that you pointed out to was the fee estimates.
Yeah.
That's a utility fee.
Yes.
And the second one is property tax levy?
Yeah, the alternative of a property tax levy in lieu of the public safety fee. That was the discussion at the budget committee, is that some committee members felt it was better to have a property levy instead of a public safety utility fee. So it's proposing one or the other here.
Well, you have the, on your levy count, you have green and not recommended with red.
Yes. The recommended.
The recommended, that's what you went through.
Yeah.
What's the non-recommended?
The non-recommended is we put 100% of our property tax revenues into public safety funding. And that leaves no property tax revenues for any other government department. That's why I'm saying, that's why it's not recommended. Because then you have nothing else to operate off of for the rest of the
City functions.
City functions.
Yeah, currently, public safety, police and fire are 70% of the general fund.
Now, we're putting a lot more than that. We're basically putting all of it into public safety, and then we're only covering the delta right now. So it's all going in there currently. 100%. And then we're using the public safety fee to cover the remainder.
Actually, the public safety fee is supposed to go to police and fire.
It is.
Money is money.
Yeah.
So I realize it's fungible, but I don't, I'm not sure I'm clear what the 70%.
It's a recommendation from staff so that we have an allotment of money for general government services. That's all it is. So it leaves 30% of the entire property tax revenue to government services and puts 70% allocated to your public safety services.
And what's confusing me is you said, but that isn't what we're doing now.
But we aren't doing that now. We're dumping 100% of our property tax revenue into public safety, and we're still not covering the cost of our contracts, and that's why we charge the additional $25 for the public safety fee. To cover that delta from our property tax revenue and the extra cost for public safety.
I don't think it's important to get down to the nitty-gritty in the budget for the important decisions we're trying to research here about police and fire, but how are we funding the other functions of government that are paid out of
Fees.
fund?
Sure.
Parks,
Fees.
I'm thinking. How are they funded then?
Fees, grants, franchise agreements, those are how we're funding those other pieces.
Basically, you're saying all
Doesn't seem
other
clear.
sources of income besides property tax.
Yeah.
So if you look at the budget, that would be the funding mechanism for
Yeah.
the operations.
Currently. And it's getting tighter and tighter every year. And so as public safety fees continue to increase, as well as operating fees continue to increase, everyone's going to be jockeying for resources. Sooner or later, if we keep dumping all of our property tax revenues into public safety, there will be nothing left for the other government functions. Right? And so that is the concern, and that's why the way we're recommending this is to go with 70% of all property tax designated to public safety, 30% designated to general government administrative functions, and then if you need to, you go out for an operating levy for any overage of the revenue that you're there. So each department, whether it's police, fire, parks and rec, admin, if they need additional funding beyond the 30%, they would then have to go out for an operating levy in order to cover that, or the council would need to make budget cuts, or the manager would have to propose budget cuts to those departments. And the question is, at what point does government become defunct because all of our revenue are going into public safety?
But as a citizen of Troutdale, I would assume that the community is going to want to be assured that they're covered, that what they're paying for, that our city's covered. That if I'm giving you...
Yes, that's the idea behind the operating levy. It's all that money in the operating levy would go straight into public safety. So it would go only to public safety. It can't be applied to anything else. So if you have like a police and fire operating levy, the money that is brought in from that levy can only be applied to those services. It cannot be spent for any other service. So it goes straight into that fund.
So you're asking to go for a levy and then not do the $25 a month. So
That's correct.
it's a levy instead of...
Yes,
But the voters have to vote on that, correct?
that's correct. I personally would rather it go to the voters to vote for this than have the council have to make a decision on the public safety fee every year. Then the voters have that say, right? And the other issue that I have with the public safety fee is that it's almost a regressive tax, whereas a operating levy is a progressive tax. And in those, what I mean is regressive tax is the same amount of disposable income and wealth equally between the richest and the poorest, and a progressive tax is on a scale, taxing those at the poorest level smaller amounts and those at the wealthiest level higher amounts. And so that's a progressive tax versus a regressive tax.
Couple things. So these are estimates from before we made the last final change to the budget. But if you look at this year, right, we're estimating 7.9 million in property taxes. And our costs for police and fire are 11,239,000. And with general fund appropriations being 25 million for, that would leave 14 million for the rest of the general fund.
Saying with the estimated fees, franchise payments, and that sort of thing.
Because our general fund revenue is 19 million and change, and of that, less than 8 million is property tax. So it's a significantly smaller number. And when you take, if you take this and you say, okay, of that, 11 million, right? We can use 50 or 70% of property taxes. Where that would put us presently is for police and fire, we'd have a deficit of 5.6 million, what we're spending now.
If you did what now?
So if I took 70% of property taxes against what we're paying, right, at 70%,
Okay.
I'd have a $5.6 million deficit.
Now, where are these figures? Which column?
They're not in the.
They're not in here.
I have a $5.6 million deficit for those.
I think what we had, when we did the budget, I thought that there were some projections in there based on the 70%, right? Wasn't it 3 million?
3 million for which?
I think if you look at actually
So I
on
guess my-
page, it is in here, it's on page 5. It's the bottom line where you see the 70, it's 5.2 million, which would be a fee of $59.
Right, so even.
Page 5, these aren't numbered. Oh.
It says fee estimates at the top.
So you're correct, it would shift some funds to the more funds to the general fund. But I guess my point to that would be, we've already got other revenue sources. And if we're taking 70% of just the property taxes, that's significantly less than we're using today or that we've ever used. I went back to like 2007 and we were like 90% just for police of property tax revenue. And so although it's evened out, it's like 68 or something today. If we just took a lesser number of that property tax, I don't see any way we could ever make it work. We'd have to really tax the tarnation out of people.
So part of, I think, our long-term plan here is to try to get the fire services out of our budget.
Right.
So as we're thinking about the 70%, we're also trying to think of what the budget looks like at some point in the future, right?
Right, but
What's our commitment gonna be?
the estimate that we saw for that was a 60% for police at that point and 40% for general services,
And that's what we're
which would
anticipating.
still put us at a negative, even at those numbers.
Yes, but it's less of a negative.
It's less of a negative, but it's still, if we're gonna like take the wheel apart and put a new one on, let's put air in the tire. And try to do it where it's more sustainable, because we've never been that low. The property tax number for law enforcement has never been that low, that I can ever find.
But we're also trying to level out our, right now we are on a financial decline.
Right?
The only way we're going to level out that financial decline is if we reduce the amount that we're spending on one of those levers, right?
Right.
So that's what we're trying to work on, is how we reduce, and the biggest lever that we have right now is our public safety expenses. I mean, I could take and wipe out the entire Parks Department, it won't put a dent in what we're spending in public safety.
Yeah. You mean like if you took it completely out?
Yeah, it's what, 2 million and change in our Parks Department?
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be the same, I give you that, but it's still, the increase has been more significant on our side than it has the public service
You
side.
mean on the general services side over the span of time?
And so that might be where we have to pick up more of this. I don't know. But I just don't see that working at that level. I don't see us ever getting to a number that works. And I think we wouldn't be able to afford any police services, really. I mean, that would really make any sense. It would be too hard. And if you look at these, I mean, like in the last, I handed this out the last meeting, over the last 7 years, we've gone up 63.6% in police, 45.96% in fire, and 85.79% in general fund services. I handed it out the last meeting, Dave.
I don't know if I have it with me. I remember the spreadsheet that you did.
Yeah.
Well, I think our recommendation is trying to find a sustainable balance moving forward. I think that's our objective and our goal. And that's why we're recommending that you do the 70% funding with and offset the delta with the operating levy. So that's that $1.20 or $1.40.
The concern that I have is to get anything passed in the city of Troutdale is very difficult. I mean, it was difficult to get this building passed. It was difficult when things were changed. we don't vote for things very often. And so to rely on a levy, I think is a big mistake. I just don't know if that's gonna pass. And we have to have a backup plan knowing of what we're gonna do. I know that when I was on public safety group, you know, we talked to the community and we talked about what is it that you're wanting for our city? And a lot of it was feeling safe. A lot of it was making sure the police were here. People were saying they weren't being seen. They weren't seeing the police at all. They weren't feeling safe. They were saying that they would get calls or they'd call in and nobody would show up. And so those were things that came from our community when we did that survey. And so my concern is having some control so that we can talk for our citizens. Right now, we don't have that say. And that's my concern, is not having a say at the table. I mean, an example is like the white van that's sitting on Frontage Road, now that it's been there for like a month and they've made themselves home. I've had people call me and say they're complaining about it. Nothing's being done. You know, and I know I've talked to you and sent you emails, and so the question is, how different is that going to be if we have our own police? We have our say, but what are the laws that their hands are tied to? Because I know people, I've heard that, I've talked to some of the police officers, and so I hear that hands are being tied by our governor. But I want to know, I mean, we can't afford a luxury car, and so we have to figure out what's best for Troutdale. But I'm concerned about the 70%, that just seems so low. I mean, I don't think, like you said, I don't think it's ever been lower than that. And so,
Like I'm saying, it's a recommended, it's what's being recommended. The council can choose that, you know, we don't like 70, maybe we want 80. Maybe the council wants to designate 90%. I don't recommend it, but that is the council's prerogative. And what I did is I put two differentials. One, we put all of our property tax in the bucket and don't designate it to public safety. That's the 100%. That's the red, I don't recommend this option. And the other one is we designate 70% of our property tax to that particular service. And then anything over that 70%, we put out to the voters as an operating levy. And then they could basically decide whether they want to fund the additional 30% or not.
So I just want to say, I believe that just about every jurisdiction I've talked to so far, and I certainly haven't talked to all of them, but I've talked to people. And I think all around there's general pressure amongst all the jurisdictions that I've talked to on funding basic services for their jurisdiction. And what I've observed in my observation, all law enforcement is doing a really good job of responding to what's important, right? So we get complaints because we're not responding to some of the smaller items. But we are doing a very good job at responding to what's important. Now, I think the important point here is any member of Staffordson is very good with numbers and very quick with numbers. You got a gift. I'm not so gifted. I am going to need more time to digest this and compare it. But I am missing some numbers. Residential versus non-residential, I can figure out what those income differences are. But what I'm not sure I'm clear on is apartment rental versus home ownership, what that spread is when you talk about progressive regressive taxing. Right? So I'd kind of like to know that.
So single-family dwellings are going to be taxed as a single-family dwelling, right?
Right.
And then an apartment complex is going to be taxed as an apartment complex, and the property owner is going to get that tax bill. And then what they're gonna see is that tax bill is going to be reflected on their rental rates.
Right. Right, and it's more units that it gets divided amongst, right? I just don't know what that ratio is looking like.
I don't know what that ratio would look like. I believe that, I believe apartments are taxed at 70% per unit. So if you had if you had 100 unit apartment, you'd probably be taxed for 70 units.
I know this sounds like I'm being nitpicky, but the reason why the numbers are so important to me, why I like having something to start with, why I want to delve into it, is I think retired detective Vining has it right. We're not really a defund the police kind of town. But what can we do to have a good balance of services that meet important needs? And so that means we do have to follow this. So I appreciate at least having a starting point. We'll do that. I don't know, maybe members have us.
Yeah, this was, well, for me, this was, I had some other things, but getting this Thursday was hard to get ready for tonight, given all the components to it. I would love to have more time to look at it and make a better comment than what I've made so far.
I also, you know, for the work group's consideration, what I did is on one of the latter pages in this packet, before you get into fire data, there is a sheet that has every estimate on the levies. Like I tried to do like every 10 cents from like $1 all the way up to 2. It's looks like it's page 22 packet, and I realize that there's not page numbers on this, but or 21, sorry. But what I did is I started at 50 cents per thousand, and then worked my way up and tried to get as close to the number that the deltas were coming up with.
Oh, I so appreciate it, because otherwise we wouldn't have anything to start with, right?
And you can kind of get an idea of where, you know, if you did quick back of the napkin math to figure out what a delta is going to be, if you went to 80% or 90%, you'd probably land somewhere in the middle here to be able to get to that number. And I kind of just populated that with a decent spread of numbers that I felt landed in the middle there. It kind of looks like a spreadsheet. I think Danny has it there. It has some green highlighted lines, yellow highlighted lines. Yep. But in that is where I did the calculation for what a levy might look like, and then trying to match the revenue generated versus the delta being created by funding the public safety services.
It's kind of interesting, because Troutdale is a medium-sized town in a metropolitan area. And I don't know if you've looked out at other jurisdictions. They're going to be experiencing similar problems.
Yeah.
I do quantify that Troutdale is a little unique because we are in such an urban area for a medium-sized town.
Yeah, I mean, I think of my experience on the west side, and I know Cornelius actually went from having their own police to a contract with Washington County, right? I think we're the only one to consider going back. I know other cities had considered. When I was at King City, we contracted with Washington County for a period of time prior to my arrival there, so I will preface this prior to my arrival there, but they wanted to bring back their own police, and so what they did is they passed a public safety levy, and they hired a retired chief out of Portland and started recreating the King City Police Department. So what I inherited there was a pretty small SWAT of like 4.
Oh my gosh.
And we grew it from there based on our population growth, you know. And so as I was leaving King City, the population was expected to go from about 5,000 to 14,000 over a 10-year period. And so we had started gearing up our police force for expanding with that growth. I think in Troutdale, the challenges of starting our own police force is that we have a population that we have to serve immediately upon a jurisdictional transfer. So in that model, there's going to have to be an overlap of us funding and training our officers so that we're ready and prepared with, like what the sheriff had mentioned, policies, general orders, equipment, and all the like. We have to have all those in place prior to a transfer. And that's where you get that $1 million+ overlap in year one. That's why it's so expensive.
I think we're focusing too much on how much we're gonna charge for the fee or the levy. My vision of what we need to do right now is decide, analyze the numbers and the reality of forming a police department or not. Whether it's a good idea or not, whether it can be done or not. Those are the kinds of things we need to bring before the council. Tomorrow night, we're having a work session, a council work session, which is does not have public comment, but is for us to work through the numbers. And I personally don't want us bogged down, and I'm calling it bogged down, in discussions of how big the fee should be or the levy should be, or whether it's 70% or 100%. What we're going to have to do is try to recommend to the citizens of Troutdale the best value for the tax money that is spent on public safety, police in particular, tomorrow night, but also for fire. And also the way I see it, we're as a city, we're going to end up charging with a levy and an argument for the levy, but we need to be showing the voters that we're recommending something that's the best deal for the city. Best protection by the police and the best fire protection for the money. And so I hate to see us converted into this argument about 70% or 100%. That is not really relevant. It isn't relevant to where we're at right now. We're out of money. We know that. We're out of money. We're spending it all. And we're going to have to try to cut in places, including perhaps police and fire if we can. Probably we won't be able to very much, but we can maybe some. And then we're going to have to put a levy before the voters. But to start the argument, start the conversation with the amount of the levy or the amount of the fee is backwards, I think. I don't know if anyone else agrees, but to me, the issue is, we're contemplating forming a police department and ending the contract that the sheriff has had with us for over 10 years very successfully. And that's a tough one. And that's what we should be focusing on, at least for tomorrow night, because that workshop is devoted to police. Fire is this committee deals with both police and fire. And we've got more pencil sharpening to do on that too. But anyway, I felt like we're getting too much into tax rates and levy rates. That isn't the issue. That isn't the issue as I see it. It's how to protect the citizens for the best value for the money.
Mayor Whitman?
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, because quite frankly, we really haven't decided to contract or in-house.
We have not.
Or fire district or no fire district. We really haven't decided that, although I think we are leaning toward the fire district. Now, the important thing that we've got to come down to is what level of law enforcement support is the population expecting, and at what level are they willing to pay for it? I'm sure there's going to be a mismatch. And that's where we have to zero into what's realistic. But what would we like to see, and how much are we willing to pay for it? What do we do for what they're we do some sampling or what?
Well, I actually think the budget committee voted to fund the hiring of a chief to start forming a department. That's the only way it's gonna happen. It has to happen incrementally. And that's the budget committee's recommendation. So there was
Was that the
support.
recommendation, or is that just to have money?
It was in the
that they have
budget.
An option for?
It was in the budget to hire a chief. Didn't mean that we have to. We don't have to.
It's in
It's
there
up to
for
the
an option,
council.
right?
But they did fund it. And I would call that an indication of support. There also have been surveys done of citizens, and I think this is a majority, but this is just an instinct. I'm mayor. I was elected, but no, you can study these things. My instinct is that the citizens of Troutdale would like to go back to a Troutdale Police Department, not because they're dissatisfied with the sheriff. Really, it's not because of that, but because they recognize the financial possibility we're facing in Troutdale, and I think the citizens recognize that we can't keep up with the increases in costs, even as modest as has been proposed. And obviously, we're also trying to sell them on fire district, which is a separate issue. So we could do one or the other, or both, but it's a separate issue, and that needs to be dealt with separately too. So we're going to go to a fire
Well,
district.
this is what we could afford currently. And what would you like to see as the level of service, and are you willing to pay extra for it? Is that how we're going to approach it?
I think Mike laid out the paying now and how much we're going to have to keep paying to continue the contract with the sheriff or to form a limited police department. And those numbers are on the projections.
I'm trying to get an idea of what the end game looks like. I'm not sure.
Well, and I don't.
We're not far yet.
We're discussing whether to do it. I think projections indicate that we're not going to be able to continue the contract for police. That's the way it looks to me, and that carries certain risks to the public safety. But I totally agree with you that we're not a defund the police city. That was not the slogan. Defund the police had to do with police misconduct in certain communities elsewhere.
Right.
That's never been my goal or even aspiration or wish or desire. We need them, and they're important to public safety and public welfare and the pursuit of happiness, frankly. That is not the idea of forming a police department, to somehow defund the police. It's what can we afford? Do we want to go that way?
And my gut feel so far with people I've talked to in the community where it has been, there is a certain expectation of the level of service that they want to see. Right? But are they willing to pay $30, $60 extra a month for it? That becomes the question. You know you want this level of service, but how much are you willing to pay to get it?
Well, there's also the question of, do we want to reconstitute the Troutdale Police Department? Which,
Well, either way.
let's face it, was more visible around town than the Sheriff's Department. It's just the way it is. That was the way it was. People remember that. whether they want to pay more. Most citizens in Troutdale, I think you could agree, will say no to that. They don't want to pay more.
Yeah. That's a
What
hard
they want
spot.
is the best value for the money we are going to spend. That's unfortunately our job.
In both ways you go, you've got choices of how much service you want.
Right, and Commissioner Allen, if I could just chime in, I just want to iterate that the Troutdale Police of old was 27, 28 officers. You know, that is far and away more than we could afford in today's market.
Right.
So,
That's what's in the back of my mind as to whether that's what they're expecting.
I just want to be very clear, our model is, it's tight, it's doable. You're gonna see patrol officers in Troutdale doing patrols, but those same officers are gonna be expected to carry out, you know, their own report writing, do their own investigations. You might be able to team up with one of the sergeants or a lieutenant to help them in on that piece. But the base that we're proposing is a thin base minimum, but it might have opportunities to grow organically over time. I think we might be able to enter into contracts. It sounded like right now the sheriff is happily contracting with Reynolds School District. I don't imagine that to change. If it does change at some point, then maybe we're there for that. You know, there's opportunities like that that might present themselves, but I don't want us to think that this is, I don't want to cast the wrong image of what we're proposing, because what we're proposing is drastically less than what was in existence back in 2015, which we just simply couldn't afford.
I don't think we do expected level of service without. I think that's pretty much what we're facing.
Right, and if we get into a fire district, then we can expand our level of service because we'll have additional revenue to help with that. And right now, I think the city is faced with this fiscal cliff right on the horizon. And we have this kind of sweetheart deal with Gresham for the next 4 or 5 years where we're paying this minimal amount. But as soon as that extension is expired, it's gonna shoot up to like 6 million and change, which we can't afford again.
Two areas are linked, right? It's that fire district, because that's a key there.
Yeah. And when you have 2 contracts that are millions of dollars, and each one is roughly 70 to 80% of your property taxes, it puts you in a predicament, you know? I mean, look at poor Fairview over there. I mean, they, with all of their funds, all of their franchise fees and revenues, the minute they pay public safety, they've got nothing left. So, I mean, they're doing a $50 plus public safety fee, and just to get in the black.
Any potential trip customers coming on?
So, I mean,
Right. Something's got to change, right?
yeah, yes, something, we're breaking the bank and we need to fix it.
Well, but I think we need to present to the council some of the concerns, right? So, like if we go from NCSO that is around and people are used to seeing them, and we go down to 12 or 13 people, and you know, what is it gonna look like for gang violence? What is it gonna look for? We keep having apartments being built in our community, are we gonna be able to cover that? I mean, I question it because, I mean, I would love to have our city police back. I loved it back then. I love the fact that if I called, they would come to my door. And I mean, we had a neighbor who called, hung up, ran to the hospital, and the cop came and said, you know what happened? And I did, but I don't know if I would get that service today. But I haven't tried that, right? But my concern is the more people we get here, moving in here, are we going to be able to cover that? But I am concerned about the finances because we just can't afford it. But I also know that the sheriff keeps coming, so that's part of it, right? she's the one that, you guys keep coming to these meetings and expressing your opinions, and I wish we could afford the world, but we can't. But I don't see no fire here. I have hardly seen fire this whole year and a half I've been on this committee. And which to me as a citizen, I feel like they just don't give a damn, or I feel like they do. And so how do we afford both? I don't know. We just don't know. And I think that we really need to look at it seriously like tomorrow and figure out what is best for Troutdale. And try to figure out what that happy medium is. I don't know what that is.
I was going to say, I somewhat jest at your property, right? I gotta say, Amazon did give us a shot in the arm that bought us some time. Bought us some time.
To clarify on the sheriff's new proposal, we lose Nick. We're gonna have our community office.
No. So we would not have the community resource officer. Give me just 1 second to get there really quick. It should be back to back or page by page in your packet. The current proposal versus the revised proposal. And then I think I explained down below what the reduction is. The reduction is 2 deputies, 1 community resource officer, and 1 records technician. And you can look at the difference between, I kind of wish I would have put them all side by side here. Lessons to myself. Versus our proposal, which has
2 deputies full, right?
ours has 8, essentially the equivalent of 8 deputies, 2 sergeants, a lieutenant, and a chief. So they have 2 detectives with theirs, whereas we would have a lieutenant and chief in those positions. And then we would have 1 less patrol officer in our proposal, and instead we would have a code enforcement.
I just wanted to add one thing. We're just saying you might not be able to support us. I happened to be in Sandy during that shooting. The support they received was incredible. Malala, Gresham, Milwaukee, Montgomery County, Washington County, Clackamas County, Clackamas County Major Crimes, Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, detectives and investigators, Oregon State Police, East County Metro SWAT, 8 AMR dispatched, 5 remained on the scene, 2 life flight dispatched, 1 taking an officer to the hospital. I can't even remember the count I had of fire trucks. It was incredible. I'm not really worried about if we had some kind of catastrophe in Troutdale. I know we have support from all areas. There's no doubt in my mind. Now, as of not having quite as much patrolling, even he says that we're not going to. And once again, like everybody else, I'm worried about the money.
I guess I'll be the odd guy out and take a little different approach. I don't think we're bogged down. I don't think we're in the weeds. I think it's all an important discussion. think we have 20 million in revenue in the general fund, and we're talking about allocating 4 million of that to police and fire. And all of these discussions are going to form what it looks like. I mean, based on that, we'd be looking at $1.60 for an operating levy, plus you'd have a $25 utility bill. Really?
Get rid of the $25.
Not if you're at 50, 20, 30, you wouldn't.
You mean the 70-30? Yeah. No, we were saying.
It's not enough.
Should be. Based on my calculations, it covered it.
Because you are allocating off a total of 5.5 million.
For year one,
Right.
but hang on.
50, 20, 30 was never adopted.
Right.
It's not something that it was rejected by the budget committee. It was certainly rejected by me.
So,
The council has not adopted it. It doesn't matter.
so the total delta at the 70% for this year was 5 million. Next year, and this is with the Troutdale proposal, and it was 3 million next year. And so what was proposed this year was with the 100%, so we were using 100% of the property tax revenue, and it came out with a delta of 2.8 million. But then next year, with the,
If you,
you're right, like next year at the current status quo, it would have been 5 million and change, and then it's 6 million, 7, and then 8.
right, and that's the point.
You're right.
I'm not trying to be argumentative, I'm just saying that it would be a significant cost either way. And when you're looking at doing a operating levy of $1.60, and then you've got a utility fee, and then you're gonna do a fire district. I mean, can we double their taxes? Can we triple their taxes? Where's the line for this? And we are, whether we like it or not, we are taking millions of dollars and moving it from one pocket to another.
But I do want to put one caveat that we were talking about an operating levy that would replace the public safety fee. So when you go to the next page there, the numbers I have in red are what it is at, we're dumping 100% of our property tax or 70%. So the first 3 line items, that's 100% of our property tax in, and the bottom 3 is like 70%. So you can read those deltas. And the current contract, like we said, 4 million, 5 million, 6 million, 7 million, and then 8 million essentially. But then with the Troutdale PD, incorporating the Troutdale PD, it went from 5 million this year to like 3 million delta next year. So it's like a reduction of 2 million. And then yeah. And then the sheriff's proposal is actually a reduction to 4 million. So instead of it being 5.5 next year, or almost 6, it's 4 million. And the Troutdale PD option for next year would be 3 million. So, and then from there, they walk up based on their contract increases.
But they're still higher than 50% in any scenario.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's proposing, I pitched 70%. So I just went 70% we're dumping into police, fire, and 911 services.
So I mean, this is tough, and it's like, I do think that the council's got tough decisions, but I also don't know that they've got everything they need. Because when you start looking at what it's going to cost, that affects, we've talked about, a lot of this is dollars and cents. And at the end of the day, how much are we going to put into this? And how much are we going to put into that? And how much are we going to put into that? And those aren't the questions, all the questions this committee can answer. But this committee, I don't think could say, okay, we recommend allocating it to this level, which would give us this service. If we're gonna do that, we need to know exactly what that is.
We're not gonna be able to know exactly what it is. That's not, it's a good question, I understand, but,
Love it.
look, my theory is of government and what I want to accomplish as a city councilor and mayor over the years is a safe, livable city. First duty of government. All the other stuff, even parks and rec and everything else, is extra, but not as important. The first duty is public safety. Absolutely, and so spending, what I was trying to say, and maybe Tandy, we're rarely in disagreement, really. I mean, you're the expert on numbers, but trying to decide that we only have this much to spend on public safety is not it just doesn't sit with me. We need to spend what we need to spend on public safety. The point is, what should we spend it on? Our own department, contracting for services, find a fire district. I'm afraid we're gonna have to ask taxpayers to pay more. Fortunately for the taxpayers, they get a say in that. They can vote no. And they usually do, actually. So, and I understand that, and I don't ask lightly. I'll just say the only reason we have these fees is because we didn't have to refer it to the voters. But we all on the council passed it holding our nose. I mean, it was like, we are out of money. And we've got to do something to raise some money, and other cities are charging fees all over Oregon. They're charging fees like this. We've gotten away with not doing it, but we're just gonna, we have to do something. So, but that doesn't mean we like it. And going out for I like the levy idea is that requires a vote of the people, and that way if they say yes, then that means they agree the money is going to be spent on that, and it's going to be and our job is to make sure it's well spent. Anyway.
And
I feel like I'm rambling.
I'm just responding to the information that I was given in the packet.
There's a lot.
Yeah, it is not easy to digest, but
My other concern is when we came to the end of the 10-year contract with Montgomery County, that's when the fees were proposed that they really run up. I'm just worried at the end of this, we're getting less service still. That they're gonna go up again, where we could have had started getting our own police force. 5 years from now, we're gonna have to rethink all this. And I did some comparisons. You might want to look at them. The city of Dallas has about our population and about our area, and they have their own police force. Now, they get funding from other things like industrial and contracts. But it's really worth taking a look at that. Sandy, which I mentioned earlier, also has its own police. And I looked at their budget too, and it's interesting. I mean, they have way more than we would have initially, that we'd have to build up to. The other thing, just to keep in mind, I'm in Sandy a lot, my daughter lives up that way. Anyway, they annexed the fire district for Sandy this past voting. but they didn't pass the Clackamas County safety levy. So I asked around, and they said, just so we know this, it was too much altogether. Having to pay the extra for the fire and then the safety. I think the safety's gonna pass next time, but that was something we need to think about. Because they said right to me, it was too much. But they're part of District 1 now.
That's why I wanted to provide what it looks like if we put 100% of our property tax revenue at it, or the recommended 70%. Because ultimately, if it goes to the ballot box, that's a council decision. And if it goes to the council box, or the ballot box, and gets rejected at the recommended level, then you come back and take a look at that. And maybe we need to adjust our budget figures down and figure out a better solution, right? Or a reduced rate that somewhat helps us get to that, fill that void. Maybe then it's a combination of property operating levy or public safety fee to fill a gap. Those are again tough decisions that require our electeds to make an unpopular decision again, which no one really likes.
So, I mean, you have this paper that says what our staffing would look like if we took this back for Troutdale, correct?
Yeah.
So where is it that what we're paying for right now for CSO?
If you actually,
I haven't seen it, but
yeah, it's the first page currently, or there's two locations that you can find it. The first page under projections, you'll see where it says police contract, and you'll see the through 2031. Granted, there's only a 3-year contract right now, but we've projected that rate out for 5 years.
So what I'm looking at is staffing.
Of staffing.
What are we getting right now from NCSO?
That's on page 21. That's this sheet right here. One more page. There you go. That's it. Yeah. And then I think if you go back one page, that's their revised proposal, and then there's their current. So the current contract right there with the appendix B, and then the 5,729,165. That's the current rate. Their revised proposal has the reduction of the 4 FTEs. It also reduces the escalator from the 9 or 10% that it is currently to 6%, and drops the overall cost from that 5.7 to 4.7 million. And then if you read the line below, you'll see the escalator, what it looks like over the 5-year period. You can see all these costs are on that projection page, on page 1. So they should correlate, and then you'll see your 5-year costs for the current MCU contract. 5-year cost was like 34 million. The revised is 26.8, and then the Troutdale PD was 18 million. This is the 5-year projected cost. That doesn't include the $20 million fire costs.
So then the numbers, we'd be just down 2, is that correct?
What's that?
If I look at these, we would just be down 2? Or I'm trying to.
From their proposal to ours, the real difference is instead of detectives, we we would have a chief and lieutenant that would also do administrative functions. Like I was mentioning earlier, they're absorbing those administrative functions in their larger umbrella. And they're setting aside detectives to do the investigative work. Whereas we would propose that our sergeants and officers could do some of the investigative work. And I think that's the big difference between the two. You know, that chief is going to be more of an administrative figurehead. They're not necessarily going to be on the road patrolling. There's an extra patrol deputy in their contract than we have. But we would still have 2 sergeants and 8 officers. So they have 2 sergeants and 9 officers.
Would there be training in that area as well? You don't want to make mistakes, right?
Oh yeah, we would have to do training. I think we were budgeting about $1 million of capital costs right off the bat. And in the budget, in our proposal, that 4.1 million is $1 million in training, capital expenditures, some of that infrastructure, all those components, the policies, all that needs to be built up. So there's a lot of that capital expense up front. And that's why you see like an initial spike before it comes back down to a reasonable rate.
So the reason why I'm so interested in what the operations do, we typically do this with at this level of service, for this X amount of dollars, this one for the reporter. Just trying to get a feel.
So,
And the key is in the questions, right? And the accuracy of how much it would cost. So for example, you get a feel for where people are going to be. The reason why that's so important to me is I see law enforcement as not a Troutdale thing. I see it as a network, right? And when you weaken that network in one area, it kind of weakens a larger area beyond the borders of just your city. And that's important to me. Now, the thing is that if my house burns down, I'm actually more concerned about the government loopholes I have to go through to rebuild it than I am the construction side of it. The construction side I could get done. I can do that very easy. I have my own equipment. Could I get through the roads? So I'm not really that concerned about fire, although I'm aware that most of it's actually medical. But I am really concerned if law enforcement is in a situation that they can't maintain good control over the problems of the city. I've seen places where that starts to get out of hand. And boy, does it start to roll down that hill fast. I don't want to get, you know. So that's why I'm trying to really go about what is that? What is that level of support?
what's that golden ratio? I mean, I've read studies and I've heard reports and things of that nature of what the golden ratio, number of officers per number of people, right?
Right.
And you hear varying degrees. If I'm a chief of police, I'm saying hey, it needs to be, I need more officers, right? I need more. And rightfully so, especially in this day and age with the Oregon leave and all that jazz. I think that number maybe decreases. But ideally, you want about 1 officer per 1,000 based on your population. And that golden ratio can sway between 1,000 to 1,500 is what you're trying to shoot for. Somewhere you want to keep it right in that path. What Troutdale was back in the day, I think we only had a population of about 8,000, 7,000 to 8,000, and we had 27 sworn officers. Is that what it was?
We had 28 FTE total.
Okay.
There wasn't ever 27 sworn officers. I mean, there might have been like 17 or something of that nature, but yeah, there wasn't ever 28.
All right.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that's kind of a living thing, right? Once you start to lose control, now you need more officers per 1,000.
Right. Right. So I think as policymakers, or even from a manager's standpoint, I'm trying to find that perfect balance, right? And I think, you know, the sheriff is doing the same on their end. They have a certain number of population they need to cover. They're trying to look for that perfect balance. I think anyone in law enforcement is trying to look for that perfect balance. And it's the challenge of our electeds is to make that decision what that balance looks like, right? Unfortunately, some of those hard decisions fall on our elected shoulders.
It's not an easy egg to crack.
But I mean, if you were asking my recommendation, I would shoot for that, the golden ratio, 1,000 to 1,500, one officer per, shoot for the middle of that, for 1,200. One officer per 1,200 will put you still within range. One officer per 1,000 would be ideal. So we're at, Troutdale's population, 16 or 17, somewhere right in there.
It's above 16, I believe.
Yeah.
So I think the sheriff's proposal is right in that golden ratio zone. We're currently well above the golden ratio, I would say, with our current proposal. I'd say the Troutdale proposal is within that golden ratio. But we are thin in the sense that we lack redundancy and we lack the larger umbrella that comes with an organization the size of Multnomah County.
And you understand why I talk about the network life, because if you lose control over East Portland, yeah, you're going to need a better ratio.
Oh, yeah.
It transfers.
It's deeper down the rabbit hole you go, right?
Right. So unfortunately, we're not solving something. Here.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is a good point. I don't know if it's in the same realm as public safety, but it's community investment as well. You know, if you don't reinvest in your community, then it starts going down that chain as well, right? All of a sudden the streets look bad, and then there's trash out there, and then there's stacked up leaves, and the park's and then no one wants to live there, so they move out, and then you're just a steady decline, right? So it's finding that harmonic balance.
I'm more of a, don't do your crime over there, because, yeah, that's tough. You know, do it over here. They're easy pickings.
Yeah.
They pop.
I'm sure they do.
I'd rather be that city. Just so you know where I stand.
Anything else before we move on?
So how does our information get transferred to the council for tomorrow? Or does it?
Is there any stuff that we want to pitch forward to the work session tomorrow or highlight for the work session tomorrow?
Well, I think it'd be good to have side by side what you just explained to me. Like if we had our own place versus what we're paying right now for MCOs. I think if we have it on one sheet where it's comparable, where you can see what we're doing, am I making sense?
Are you wanting,
Instead of doing this and trying to keep it in my head, I'm very simple. If you could have it like on, so this is what we're gonna do if we have Troutdale. This is what we're paying for right now. That might help the council kind of look at that. The other thing is, Adrian had mentioned one time about having some town, city, like meetings, community meetings. So maybe we start looking, present that to the council and start looking at maybe we can do that.
We are proposing that in October.
Okay.
One of the October council meetings will be a town center
Oh, no.
hall meeting.
Okay. That kind of goes along with what I'm asking for, right?
Yeah, because that would be good to have like the police there, right? Fire there. I mean, to really, so the community can come and really express their opinions in person. Maybe, but
right, so are you just propose, I mean,
I think
Town hall should
she's
be
asking
submitted to city council meeting too.
this proposal, especially this page,
Be right
as
next
it goes
to
into the, overnight hours and things
Yeah.
like that is too complicated. Have that next to what the CSO provides us now under the proposed contract.
Right.
Could you do that? That's kind of a tall order for a one-day job, but I know you have nothing else to do, Mike. No, but that's what she's asking for, and I'm saying just this page,
Yeah.
don't you think, just this page? Don't go into the nitty-gritty about severity, high, moderate, and all that. That's all good, leave it here, but have one page in addition to this that compares the staffing level of a proposed Troutdale Police Department with the staffing level from the sheriff. I think you've got the numbers here.
I do, it's like the next page right on, yeah.
Well, it is, but I agree with
But
Carol,
it's
it
very
isn't that
confusing.
easy to see, especially when the pages aren't numbered. I also suggest for tomorrow, if you're gonna have this, something as big as this, which is fine, maybe give each counselor and have some for the public with numbered pages.
Yes.
Send them all out again. Hey,
Well, both options have some adjustability in it, right?
well, of course, these are just, but we need to discuss it as a council and make comparisons between the two proposals, so.
And maybe how many officers per thousand?
Oh, don't get down, that's getting down in the weeds, Rich. I appreciate you, but I think what Carol's asking for is simpler, just a comparison of staffing.
I think it just makes it more clear, because that was my frustration at budget, was you go to page 5 for this, but then the reference is on page 120, and it's very confusing for somebody who's not a numbers person.
Yeah.
And so, like I tell my husband all the time, make it simple, put it on a page, that we understand this more and more. But there is one thing that I just saw a discrepancy on, even when and I know it's a numbers thing, and that's just out in the open, but when you have patrol shift structure on your idea of having our own police department, because there's 4 hours of nobody.
What's that?
There's 4 hours of no patrol, no nothing.
Where's that?
You've got, if you go to patrol shift structure, 4x10, you've got day shift, 600 to 1600, 2 officers, late shift, 1400 to 00, that's what confused me. Okay, so the night shift is 2200, and I didn't see anything that was, speaking out loud makes it more clear, sorry. I was like freaking out there for a minute.
Yeah, I thought it was covered.
000 does not make sense in my head.
Oh, midnight?
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that, yes. Speaking out loud, I think makes it easier for me. But anyways, something like that, it just makes it easier if you have it on one page somehow.
I really don't think we have to. Like, what about sickness, vacations,
FMLA.
Yeah.
and overtime versus?
Well, we've talked about that a little bit with, and granted, it's not ideal, but contracting with the OPS services to reserve officers sort of fill gaps. Lori Sotheby is the principal over there. They're the ones that do our beach patrol and parks patrols at night. And we've talked with them about the possibility of regrouping or contracting to fill gaps. We could also contract with other agencies such as Multnomah County to fill gaps, potentially if they have the staffing or manpower, or other agencies, the City of Gresham, those sort of things, to help fill those gaps. Or you could have reserve officers retained. That's an added payroll cost if you bring them in. There's about, I know it's not a lot, but we did put about $100,000 of overtime in the budget consider shift extensions, things of that nature. Granted, that would get used up really fast. So like I mentioned earlier, I envision that if the council went down this pathway, and nothing's been decided yet, but this thing would have to grow organically from a starting place. And so what we're proposing is a starting place, and then to allow it space and time to grow.
So I'm a high analytical, which people won't tolerate. And Chair Allen, I'm going to be careful here. Once it's simple. So if you get somewhere in between these two extremes, you're going to do okay.
Well, I'll be happy to take the numbers that we have, and then I'll try to get with Eric to put them all onto cost comparable spreadsheet similar to this, so you can kind of see that. That way you have them all three lined up back to back to back. Carol?
Did we get all three of them? Not just the two. We get their new proposal,
That's what we're talking about, because right now we have the existing and the new proposal back-to-back pages in here, but then you have all of this is Troutdale PD, right? So this is a very long-winded explanation of our proposal, and then we've already got a contract that works, so there's this very one-page, easy to read, and breaks down, whereas ours is diving into the how we're going to make it function, if that's what they want to go with. So I can certainly work on that. I don't know if I'll have time to get it to you by tomorrow night, but I'll certainly try.
Just cancel everything else.
Right. Tuesdays aren't busy at all.
This might help you just a little. On the utility fee, we originally talked about 2.8 million a year. And at 2.8 million a year, it would be $389 per resident. And so they would pay $389 each. And the 270 businesses would pay an average of $4,092 each. And that includes, in that number, it includes the 70% for multifamily. So that's off of that.
Well, it's a work session, and
Add that information in the budget, didn't we, of the breakdown commercial versus.
Right, so we have 17 minutes
For fire discussion?
for the fire discussion. Yeah, the task force meeting.
So at our last fire task force meeting, we discussed revised numbers with District 10 and diving into some of their proposal pieces. They want to take a deeper dive into those numbers and explore them. Right now, I think everybody at the fire task force agreed that the District 10 proposal is blows the other proposals out of the water when it comes to funding. I think you can see that in your packet. There's a page in your packet that, or there's aspects to the packet. One goes through the District 10 proposal and what their numbers are. Unfortunately, when I tried to download the District 10 proposal, all of the slides disappeared. And so I had to scan my personal one in and use that instead. So you get my lovely handwritten notes on the District 10 proposal to give you some numbers. But in your packet, you will find District 10's numbers were well below some of the other numbers that were being proposed for the city of Gresham. There are also some call and mutual aid reports regarding fire services prior to the District 10 proposal. I just want to make sure I have these numbers right. District 10 is proposing to use their $2.85 per thousand in order to provide enhanced services. That's the 8 1/3 stations. This includes a station in the Wood Village area and one in the Pleasant Valley area. I always forget the name. And in that, they're proposing to reduce their training overhead and their admin support team. Similarly, the city of Gresham came up with a proposal to maintain current levels of service at $3.73 per thousand. So again, reiterating District 10 at $2.85 per thousand with additional fire stations, but no capital expenditures are wrapped into that. So I just want to be very clear on that. Neither are capital expenditures incorporated into Gresham's projected rate of $3.73 per thousand. Then Gresham is proposing an enhanced service level that includes the 2 fire stations, does not include capital expenditures for the construction of said fire stations, and that rate was $4.69 per thousand. And you can see that on page 55 of your packets toward the back, and that was part of the it was part of the PowerPoint that was presented to the Gresham City Council. So right now we're looking at 4 options. Keeping our status quo where we're contracting with Gresham, and we anticipate that at the end of this 5-year IGA, there will be a rate per capita of about $3.73 to maintain the current level. So right now, as an example, I think we're paying about $1.55 to $1.57 per thousand for our fire services, somewhere in that range. So if we had to go to $3.73 per thousand, that would essentially double that number, and then some. Even going to District 10 essentially doubles that number. Going to the enhanced service district essentially triples that number. So just understanding what proposals are on the ground. Proposal 1 so far, which is the most cost-effective proposal that I've seen, is the District 10 proposal at $2.85 per thousand. That adds 2 additional, or staffs 2 additional fire stations. The second proposal is current contract district 4 cities at $3.73 per thousand. And then the fourth proposal is an enhanced proposal from the city of Gresham for additional fire stations at $4.69 per thousand. At the meeting, we discussed having Clackamas 1, which is the final component of what the task force was assigned to evaluate. We were supposed to evaluate 4 proposals. Current, a 4-city district, what that might look like, District 10, and then District 1. So those are our 4. We've asked Clackamas 1 to put together a proposal. We'd like to see that. They said that they wouldn't be able to do it in July and August, but I believe they said they could try to get something pulled together by September, October.
Maybe August.
Maybe August, but
Maybe not July, though.
so that's where the task force left it. Mayor, am I missing much?
Yeah, just a couple things. The District 10 proposal is just a figment of their imagination, in my opinion. They contract with Gresham for all fire services, all equipment, everything. They can't afford to cross Gresham in any proposal they make. There was kind of a noise from Gresham that they loved the District 10 proposal, but that's because the District 10 proposal is going to end up looking just like Gresham's. It will. It can't not look the same because they contract for the same personnel, equipment, and stations. Sorry, but one of these meetings now for 8 months or however long, and I've heard it all. So District 10 proposal was really nice. If you just look at the number of their tax rate, but it isn't real. So Gresham, basically we're analyzing keeping current situation, which we cannot afford. We cannot afford it. Or forming a district with Gresham and District 10 also, and forming a new fire district. And those are basically for the same number of stations and same services, 3.373 per thousand, or the enhanced 469. And so we're waiting, those of us who were in Troutdale, Fairview, and Wood Village, who originally agreed to contract with Clackamas One and were persuaded not to by Gresham finally offering us an extension of their contract under reasonable terms, which we very much appreciate. We very much appreciate that, but we're at the point where we wanted to hear from Clackamas One. And the task force did agree to hear from Clackamas One. And to me, that needs to be heard. If they can't match Gresham District 10, I lump those together, they're gonna look the same. I'm no expert, but in my opinion, that's what they're gonna end up having to look. They have to look the same because they have the same personnel, same equipment and everything else. They'll look the same, and it'll be a comparison between District 1 which is Clackamas District 1, which would mean a district that encompasses both the Clackamas district and including the 4 cities and maybe District 10. That would be a much bigger fire district.
I would elaborate on that a little bit and say the difference between the District 10 proposal and the Gresham proposal were the administrative costs. There's like a $10 million delta between the administrative costs on Gresham and District 10. That's what.
Do you think Gresham's going to stand for District 10, providing us services through Gresham at a lower cost than Gresham charged us? No. I'm sorry. I'm a realist. It just isn't going to. In the end, it won't work that way. It will not work that way.
No, this committee was formed to discuss fire, and we never heard for almost a year on anything. And I get frustrated that why aren't we hearing anything? Why is it taking months and months and months to come up with stuff to present to us?
Clackamas One was not invited to present. I was waiting, we started in October, November. I was thinking by December, January, at least we'd hear from Clackamas One. We never did because they weren't invited. The meetings are run by Gresham. They're in Gresham City Hall. Doesn't mean they're anymore. It's just they never did call Clackamas One.
I mean, the first 3 meetings were literally going over the rules of the committee and how we were going to move forward.
And there was a money spent on surveys, voter surveys, and concluding that the voters are going to be very hard to convince to want to raise their taxes. We could have not spent that money as far as I was concerned because I knew that.
Yeah. And then there was a presentation on the number of calls and the kind of service levels that are going to be needed and what those costs look like. And then they had Tiberius Solutions running numbers for them for one. And it was a lot of information gathering for the first 6 months and not a lot of meat on the bone, if you will.
So that's why we haven't heard anything. We're as anxious, we meaning at least some of us, are very anxious to hear one more proposal that we've been waiting for.
I think the frustration is that we contract out with these companies, but we have no say. We don't say anything. And if we pay all those millions of dollars, why don't we have a say? That's my question. For both, for MCSO and for fire.
We have the say of a contract, we're the customer is always right. But yeah, we don't really. I mean, I said my piece when we first contracted with the sheriff's office that I was trying to argue that the sheriff isn't elected by Troutdale, it's elected by Multnomah County. We don't know who the sheriff is going to be. We happen to have an excellent sheriff, and we've had excellent sheriffs. But we don't really have much say over that. I mean, Troutdale gets a few votes in the county, but not a lot. The budget for the sheriff is in the hands of the Multnomah County Commissioners. And they are not really focused on Troutdale. Our current sheriff is, and we appreciate that very much. Our current commissioner is, but anyway.
Talk about fire.
Yeah.
So, District 10, very low cost model. They're currently on a volunteer status, right? They're volunteers within their.
Yeah, they have a couple admin pieces and mostly a volunteer board, well, all volunteer board, right?
They do respond to some of our fires. I think, remember Stephenson, you've seen some of that because
You're mixing them up with District 14. Corbett has volunteers. Corbett sometimes helps us out. But District 10, all their equipment, all their personnel are contracted from Gresham. They're all Gresham.
District 10.
They don't have anybody.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor. District 10 owns a fire station up at, is it Renko?
Cherry Park.
Cherry Park. Yeah.
Cherry Park, and then the one further down.
The training
And
center.
they have the training facility, the one in Troutdale, and the other one south of town over by
So it's
Renko.
14 that's responding to Troutdale incidences on the east side of the river. All right, so I see this as simple in the sense that we don't get really good service. And it's not the fault of Gresham or Gresham Fire. It's because we don't have stations out this way, right? Those two stations are kind of key for our service level.
I think Troutdale, this is the thing, in Troutdale, in the city of Troutdale proper, we get pretty decent service. So when you get to the other side of I-84, and you're up in the industrial area, or Fairview, or Wood Village, there's a giant gap in time trying to get over there. And that is a gap, a service gap, that Gresham has identified that needs additional service, because it's more time consuming for them to be able to get there. Most of the situations.
There's no incentive, because it wouldn't be their firehouse, right? If Gresham's not gonna put money into another city, and they probably legally can. And then I'm also aware that most of our service is actually medical. 97% is medical and 3% is
78.
right? So it's very important that we choose a model that has better coverage, that has good medical. That's on the fire, except for you don't want to upset the insurance companies because you don't want to raise people's insurance rates.
So
They want to keep it below that. So which proposal actually is that the best?
my humble opinion, the District 10 proposal gives us theoretically the best service for the least amount of cost. But as the mayor was saying, there's a high likelihood that that's not realistic.
It's theoretical.
Because at their $2.85 that they're proposing, that's their current permanent tax rate, right? So technically District 10 exists as a district. It would be an annexation into that district, which is kind of makes some components easier, right? But what's the right number for that district to succeed? And that's what these studies are supposed to help us get to. And that's why at the task force meeting, we said we want to dive into these numbers a little more and just make sure that it's accurate. Because like the sheriff had mentioned, like building that infrastructure and transferring that infrastructure and getting everything and the policies and it takes work. It takes a lot of work. I mean, the easiest thing for me to do is stick with the status quo here. You know, easiest thing for Gresham to do is stick with the status quo. You know, but if we're looking at making some changes or something else, and we're looking at making modifications to the policy model, then there's going to be work.
When you look at Gresham's operational efficiency, there's some gains to be found there.
Well, there's always,
Not as efficient as it could be, especially when you start comparing with other schools. So I don't think that's a good model.
yeah.
But to the mayor's point, politically, it's achievable. Like if District 10 doesn't own anything and Gresham Transfer is going to have most of the say, won't it end up the same as it is?
That's the mayor's point, yes.
That is my concern.
And there's a high likelihood that, I think the struggle here, to be frank, is to find a proposal that's palatable to the ratepayers in the city. That they are willing to accept. And that is your big struggle. And even at 285, which is the lowest of all four options,
I expect it to be somewhere in between, but can you get a Gresham Fire Department that transfers over to like a district to run in a more efficient manner?
yes, and I think the mayor's onto something with Clackamas One. I think if you did something similar to that, where, and this is that $10 million discrepancy in admin costs that we see between District 10 and the Gresham proposal and what our numbers were coming out of Clackamas One that we compared with the Gresham model, even last year. There's like this $10 million mysterious discrepancy in the cost for fire services coming out of Gresham. And we've asked Gresham to explain what's going on with that. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Mayor, but when we said we'd like to dive into your numbers to Gresham to find out what about this 10 million, they were less inclined to go down that path.
I would say that, yes.
Well, sure, it's in their budget. But
The details are going to be harder to dig to.
I want to respect everybody's times. We're over 8:30, so does anybody want to last minute? Candy?
I would say, I think as far as fire goes, we have a lot of unanswered questions. And there's a lot of work to be done. You look at adding stations 77 and 78, there really is not a big benefit to Troutdale there. That's not going to reduce our response times at all. And that should be our goal, is to provide better service. So I don't believe we can effectively charge people double what they're paying today, give them the same service.
Okay, so the next one is set next meeting. So I don't remember, do we meet in July? We need to meet in July.
Well,
How much abuse he wants.
I don't think we're gonna need to meet in July because I don't think we're gonna have any clear direction from the fire task force until August or even September.
So do we want to set a date for August or do we want to set a date for September?
I would recommend September, to be honest with you.
How does everybody else feel?
Yes, September's fine.
Yeah, I would say it also depends on what happens tomorrow night.
Yeah, we can call a meeting if we
If we need to, you can call it.
do it, but, September and what's a normal date? Is this
Or
So it'd be
Monday?
September 21st.
Very good. I move we adjourn. Are we
Second.
done?
Do we have a second to adjourn?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're done.
It gives me plenty of time to get through my business.